Hello and welcome everybody. I'm just going to give it a minute or two to let everybody join, and then we will kick off properly. So bear with us for just a second. Right, I think we've given it a minute for everybody to join. I'm sure others will join as we go through. That normally is the case. So welcome everybody. Sort of good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. And today's webinar is the Recruitment Market Report, and it's with great pleasure that I'd like to introduce Harrison Good. Harrison is the co-founder of EdgeTech Headhunters, and he's also the author of the Market Report. So Harrison, how are you? And can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi Rob, thanks for having me on today. So obviously my name's Harrison Good. I'm one of the co-founders for EdgeTech Headhunters. We're a headhunting and recruitment consultancy based here in the UK. We operate globally, right across the UK into Europe and in the US, focusing on disruptive and emerging technologies. RPA is obviously a particular one that we focus into, but we also work into the Internet of Things space, AI, blockchain, data science, offering permanent and contract recruitment solutions. So that's a bit about us, and sort of in terms of what we do.
No, thank you very much, and I'm sure the audience will have a few questions for you on sort of questions beyond RPA. So I think some of that disruptive tech may be something of interest to people. So to everybody in the audience, now that you've logged into the webinar, you should be able to see a questions section. So as you're listening to the webinar and as you're sort of hearing the sort of news from Harrison, please do ask some questions, and I'll moderate those at the end, and we've got 5 or 10 minutes at the end to pose those questions to Harrison. So please start thinking about that now. But to kick off, Harrison, let's talk about the report. Sort of having written a book myself and known the agony and the ecstasy. First of all, what on earth made you want to do it in the first place, and what is it?
Yeah, so it was something that we'd been thinking of doing for a little while. We noticed that there wasn't quite anything out there in the space at the moment. RPA is still a relatively new technology for a lot of people, and there's not a lot of information out there, certainly from a recruitment perspective around what the market looks like, what salaries can people expect, where are these jobs, what are the hottest skills, what are the best skills to have, how do you transfer into that market. So we spent about 6 months doing a lot of market research from a recruitment perspective on everything of the market in 2018, so last year, so the second half of 2018, and we looked to try and cover everything from an employee or candidate or job seeker perspective, an employer perspective, potentially someone who's a hiring manager or looking to hire these skills, and also generally in terms of the jobs that are out there and what they sort of look like. And we really want to do this because the skills gap in the RPA space is such a huge talking point and has been for the past couple of years. So we really wanted to address that and try and help out as many people as we can on both sides of the fence across the space. So yeah.
So I think this is probably a good point to sort of mention that we have the opportunity to be a little bit interactive with everybody. So we've got a poll that we're going to just put up in just 1 second, which is to sort of ask you a little bit about sort of your current salary ranges, and we'll compare that to some data that we're going to display on the next slide. So I'm just going to launch that now. And you should be able to see that appear on your screens before you, so that you can start sort of answering that question. And I guess while we're sort of waiting to sort of see what the outcome from that is, sort of how much data did you actually sort of gather? So how many people were involved in the report?
So yeah, we surveyed approximately over 1,500 professionals in the space. A lot of that data was from our own network, from our own database. So a lot of people that we speak to, not only job seekers, but hiring managers as well, trying to get as much information from far and wide, right across the UK, as we could. And obviously, you know, that took a period of 6 months, so it took a little bit of time for us to do. But once we had all the data, yeah, we really tried to put that to use to make it viable for people to compare themselves to, and really relate to, you know, to what we're putting out there, what's out there on the market, and really get a gauge for where they are as well. So yeah.
I don't know if you can see on your screen, Harrison, we're starting to get some results coming back. So sort of 50% of responses are, you know, in the high range, so the sort of 60k to 70k in pounds, and the next highest is the opposite end, so sort of the 30k and below.
Yes, yeah. So it's quite interesting to see, and I think we have seen quite a split in that sense as well. From when we did a lot of our research, there were a lot of people at the lower end wanting to get into the space, not a lot of experience, weren't really sure where to position themselves, really curious about getting in. And then there were the people who had been in the space for a little while, maybe since RPA had really become a thing, and those were the people who had, you know, a lot of experience, a lot of expertise, and those were the ones who could, you know, really deliver a lot of value to organizations, and rightly so, you know, commanding those high salaries. So yeah, that's what we see quite a lot.
So I guess I'm going to close the poll now, so we'll sort of we'll finish on that. But it is amazing. The middle of that poll is you know, sort of completely empty, and it really is polarized at either end, with 50% in the below 30k. So we'll see how that compares to your next slide, which was some data for permanent salaries.
Yes, yeah. So this is obviously a good virtual image of you know, of what it's like in the space at the moment across everyone that we surveyed and that we spoke to, and when we done our market research. And one of the things that we wanted to do with this, not only for people out there wondering what their value is in the market, but for organizations who are looking to hire or potentially retain their staff, to make sure that they're actually rewarded and in line with market rates. We constantly have a lot of clients coming to us asking about, you know, what should I be paying my people? What should I be looking for? What should I be looking to pay when I do hire people? And for us, we were always giving our advice about what the market rate is, but without any actual evidence of that. It was, they were kind of taking our word for it, which you know, sometimes it's a bitter pill to swallow from a recruiter, because you think, oh no, they're just sort of looking for the money. But yeah, when we put the data together, we, you know, a lot of organizations have used this, you know, from the vendors to, you know, large consulting firms, all the way through to, you know, end users implementing the tech and industry, so banks, insurance companies, sometimes taking this to their senior management and saying, look, we need to pay our guys this, or this is what we need to align our new jobs at. And also for people in the space as well. You know, I've had people say, oh, I'm doing this at the moment, what should I be on? What should I be looking for in my next moves? And this is also, you know, good for people to know as well, sort of in terms of their career progression. So yeah.
Yeah. And were there any, when you pulled the data together for the first time, were there any surprises in there?
I think the main surprise for us was from the development perspective.
Yeah.
As you can see on here, I think the range is, you know, it's a very big range, probably the most, you know, as opposed to sales, because that does vary at different levels. But developers, given their experience, they can be anything from, like I said, there, you know, kind of mid to sort of late 20s, early 30s, all the way up to, you know, to under 70k. If you get a really good developer or type architect, they can really command a lot of day rates. So that range for us was quite a shock. Obviously, we speak to these people on a regular basis, but seeing that for ourselves and seeing the range of what those people are in is, you know, it's quite impressive, and it's good to know that there's a lot of opportunity for progression in that type of position as well.
Yeah, I think the other one that sort of did surprise me a little was the sales one, which is clearly the widest range of all. And I think you may have answered that in when you commented earlier, but is it because there's such a wide range of jobs in there, or is it because there's different sort of commission structures?
Yeah, yes, yeah. We kind of clump sales together quite a bit, and that could be anything from a sort of internal salesperson doing quite a lot of lead generation, booking appointments, all the way through to senior enterprise sales guys who are, closing multi-million-pound deals. And to be completely honest, this sort of salary, that's just the sort of base salary. The OT that those guys are achieving, is well into the hundreds of thousands, maybe even to the 200,000 pound mark. Obviously convert that over to dollars as well for the guys and girls in the US, but that's what you can really be expecting. So moving into a sales role for one of the vendors, or selling the consulting services for RPA, there's a lot there. There's the market really still is up for grabs. There's a lot of money to be made from from a sales perspective as well. So yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And I guess if we saw in our earlier poll that 50% of people were in that sort of lower range category. So towards the bottom of the developer scale potentially.
Yeah.
What are the things that really that you see out there that really distinguish, that helps people move up to the next pay scale as far as that's concerned?
I think it's really just gaining that exposure and experience where you can. Obviously, if someone's not in the industry, then training is a massive part. Being trained up in the technology, gaining an understanding from a technical perspective, even if you're not a technical person at heart, gaining that technical understanding and those sort of accreditations and learning a bit more about the tech where you can. Obviously, joining webinars like this as well, finding out a bit more. But I think in terms of people who are looking to take that next step, it really is just engulfing yourself in the knowledge, in the space, really getting a good understanding, trying to skill yourself up where possible, and trying to take that jump. A lot of people have been, we've seen it quite a bit before, and these are obviously the permanent salaries. We've seen people in their current roles taking permanent positions, building up their skills in a permanent role. Once they have that experience, then they're moving, rather than being contracting, doing short contracts. Because the work, sometimes you haven't got that much experience, you don't know where the next contract's going to come from. But being permanent, you've got that longevity, you've got that sort of that comfort blanket, I suppose, of having a permanent role, building up your experience within that organization, gaining as much exposure as you can. And then that's how a lot of people have done it, if they're already in that type of position. But yeah, certainly if people haven't got that experience, it's very much more about sort of training and sort of educating yourself and learning. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess that leads us sort of quite neatly onto our next audience poll, whereby we were just sort of interested to sort of see sort of our audience out there, the number of contract versus permanent people.
Yeah, yes, yeah. So we've seen quite a shift actually, and hence why we have given two graphs on permanent and contract salaries. There are both out there. We've seen a real shift over the past year to contracts. A lot of people have been building up their skills and experience. So yeah, it's really interesting to see what that shift has been, who's made that transition across, if they have, or if they're considering it. And that was a big part of our market research that we conducted.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I guess I mean, the RPA Academy do obviously do RPA training and certifications, and it can often be quite different, I think, between when we do training for companies versus training for individuals. So we find that the trainings for individuals, they really focus on the certifications, but trainings for companies, they're much more focused on the deliverables. So we tailor that training to what's required by that particular business. What do you see that same sort of thing? Is what value is certifications in the market?
Yeah, we see that reflected as well. Certainly with individuals who are looking to achieve that, like you say, it's much more around the accreditation. But with companies that we work with as well, who are either use a training partner like the RPA Academy, or they decide to do it in-house and train the people up, it is more focused around the deliverables, around what that person will be doing. Rather than the accreditation. So yeah, we've definitely seen that from our side of the fence as well.
So I'm gonna stop the poll there, but we've got 25% in contract and 75% in permanent.
Yeah.
So I'll move on to the next slide.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, obviously we've got the the contract day rates here, and it's just another representation of what the market is like at the moment, and what sort of salaries people can expect, or day rates people can expect while contracting. And to be honest, this year we haven't seen much of a change, so it's still very similar. But like I said, we've seen a lot more people start to transition over to that contracted world because it can be so lucrative.
Yeah. And I guess here there's less that jumps off the page that sort of is a surprise. I think the ranges all seem fairly quite narrow. Have you seen them nudge up at all over that since you've produced this data?
Yeah, I think the ones that have sort of changed a little bit has been around the business analyst, process analyst type of roles. So people who are more on the senior end, we've seen a lot more up to sort of maybe even the £600 a day, 650, maybe even touching on £700 a day for a really good process analyst. But also on the project management side of things as well, that's kind of shot up a little bit. People with prior RPA experience delivering RPA projects, running these projects, we've seen that jump up as well. So when we did the study, it was around 600 was probably the max that we'd seen. There had been some rare occasions, but we see that up to about 700, 750, maybe even touching 800 at times as well from people that we've spoken to. So those are the ones that we've seen a massive jump in. In terms of the developers and engineers, there hasn't been a huge change too much from that side. I don't think that's going to change a huge amount. And all the others have stayed pretty much where they are from there. So yeah.
So I've just been sort of having a quick sneak look at some of the questions. So thank you, thank you for everybody who started to ask questions. Don't forget those questions are there. We'll quiz Harrison on them shortly. I'll keep you in suspense over what they are. And I guess the market report really sort of covered a wide range of other factors, as well as the the salary range, which I'm sure is something that the people are most interested in. But what were the other surprises and factors that sort of really came out when you started analyzing this data?
So yeah, for us, I think it was touching on geographies. I think that was one of the biggest surprises for us. We thought that there was going to be about 90% of the opportunities and roles and people were going to be based sort of in London, and then they'll have other people dotted elsewhere across the UK. But without stating the obvious, London is always going to have a high percentage of people, given that it's a large city. But I suppose the geography of RPA professionals across the UK is very, very widespread. There's no one central hub. Obviously, London a little bit more so, and that goes for the roles and jobs as well. It's very widespread across the UK, out into Wales, up into Scotland, northern UK. It is very widespread, and a lot of the opportunities as well, sort of home-based. We start to see a lot more of home-based positions nowadays, where people aren't needed in the office 5 days a week. We're moving away from that. A lot of organisations that we work with are very agile. Maybe in the office once a week for meetings, but the rest of the time either working from home or on client site, if that's the sort of position that you're in. So I think that was the biggest surprise. Not having a massive hub in London, but being much more widespread than we originally thought. And I think one of the other things as well was what people usually have in their minds around a salary gap, and you have the London price, and then you've got elsewhere in the UK, and you go further up north. Sometimes it's the salaries aren't as good, but that's completely not the case for RPA. It's very, very the salary sort of structure is very flat across the UK. So someone in London can be getting paid exactly the same for someone up in Leeds, because the skills are in such high demand. These organisations are paying what they need to pay for the right people, and more so sometimes for the more remote locations where you can't find the people, or they're slightly harder to find. Sometimes they can command higher salaries because there are so few people in that area. So it almost tips the other way a little bit. So that was another surprise. We thought that, you know, London would pay a little bit more, but yeah, it's not the case from what we found. So yeah, it's quite interesting.
And that's quite counterintuitive, really. You would always assume. I mean, you know, if we look sort of more globally across the data set, are there any other hubs, you know, around sort of Europe, around the world that sort of really sort of stand out?
Yeah, so I think obviously the major cities in Europe, certainly in Germany, Munich's quite you know, a hotspot out there for those guys. Paris in France, quite a lot of the Nordic countries as well. There's no one particular area across that region that stands out more so than the others. It is still very widespread. Out into the US, we see quite a lot of activity in the, you know, New York area, down into Austin, Texas region. Those are the two sort of main areas that we see quite a lot from. Obviously out into the West Coast as well, but those are probably the main ones. But like I say, there's never really, from what we've seen, we do operate globally, but there's no one hotspot for, you know, for certain either roles and jobs or RPA professionals as well. So yeah.
And I think, you know, again, if we apply this across into the sort of training world for a little bit, you know, I think we would sort of see the same sort of thing, because, you know, we do both online, you know, they're always live instructor-led training, and whether we do that in the classroom or do that online, you know, people are sort of converting across a little bit more to having the convenience of being able to just train for a couple of hours a day with a live instructor in their office, and then go back to the day job, and it's just easier to sort of facilitate that around the sort of work. So, you know, trainers could be anywhere in the world so long as they're awake. They're you know, you can sort of locate them wherever you need them to be, and you don't have all of the travel that goes alongside that.
Yeah, definitely.
So I guess, you know, I'm going to move on to, so the next topic is trends, but before we sort of jump onto that, and as we start talking a little bit about trends, I'm going to sort of bring up our sort of last poll, and we'll sort of see where that takes us as well. So we can do that in parallel. And so our last poll is really just around sort of, you know, sort of individuals, and are you thinking about sort of moving jobs? And a quick reminder, any more questions, please do sort of pop them into that questions box, and I'll sort of face them to Harrison as soon as we're through the next section. So while that poll's going on, sort of market trends and a few predictions, which is always very dangerous in the RPA space, because I think you never imagined quite what's happened.
No, you can never be too sure. Yeah, I think when we in our report, we start off by talking about more acquisitions in the space, and one of the most recent ones when we did the report was when SAP acquired Contexta. Now we've seen something more recent, where, you know, since our report is obviously Thoughtonomy being acquired by Blue Prism, which had been rumored for a little while, and that was actually one of our predictions, you know, more acquisitions across the space, and obviously we were proven right on that one. So that was a good one to predict. But yeah, and we certainly see that happening a lot more, with, you know, maybe some of the leading vendors in the space, or potentially some of the more challenger vendors coming through. You know, where there's the money, you know, it's bound to happen. You know, these types of vendors are doing some great things in the space. So any other sort of big player will be keeping their eye on them for sure. And I think funding rounds was another thing as well that we predicted to see a lot more of moving forward into this year and into the future. I think on writing our report, UiPath numbers had actually changed. They have just over $1 billion in funding, and sit at I think it's a $7 billion valuation currently. So and we see that right across the space, and we think that that's going to continue to happen. You know, WorkFusion received, you know, 50 million Series E, and Automation Anywhere received, I think they raised $300 million last year in one of their rounds of funding. So we see this continuing and being still being a big thing, and seeing more and more huge valuations in the space, which is quite exciting to see these sorts of organizations raising that sort of capital.
Yeah. So I guess if I just nip back to the poll for a second, I'm
Yeah.
going to close it in just 1 second. But we've got 70% of people are sort of in the going to move now or within the next 6 months, which is
Yeah.
quite a surprisingly high number. Are you shocked by that?
I don't think so. I think, given that I work in recruitment, and this this webinar is focused on recruitment, I think these viewers are obviously quite sensible in tuning in. But I think a lot of people in the space, even the people that have been in their current roles for 6 months to a year, I still speak to people who are not actively looking but will consider a move if the right opportunity comes up. And I think that's quite important for people in the space. Obviously it's good to build up your experience in a permanent role, let's say, for instance, but you never know what move is around the corner. I think it's always good to keep your options open. If there's a great opportunity that comes knocking on your door, then I think, if you weren't open to hearing about it, then you never know where that move can come from, whether it's in the next 6 weeks or the next 6 months. So contract is obviously slightly different. The contractors are always, they've always got their finger on the pulse. Typical contracts we see are sort of six months in length. So we're always talking to contractors in that sense. So yeah, I don't think that surprises me a huge amount, but yeah, it's good to see though. It's good to know that people are always sort of keeping an eye out. Keeps us busy.
Definitely a positive story. I think one of the other things, we're both in partnership with RPA Talent, which is an interesting organization. RPA Talent, for those who don't know, is effectively a way to rank RPA professionals. In the UK, and we've got trustatrader.com, so where you can sort of go and sort of confirm your plumber is legit, and then whether he did a good job. And now we've got the same option for RPA professionals. What brought about the partnership from your point of view with RPA Talent?
So yeah, I think the platform itself is a great idea. Having a job board and a platform where it's purely focused into RPA. I think for people who are looking for their next project, they're looking for their next opportunity, or hiring managers or people in hiring positions looking for hard to find talent. Having it all in one place is great. Obviously, it's great for us because we get to post our jobs on there. There's a lot of traction, a lot of activity on there. We know that we're going to get the right people applying to our jobs, rather than using your sort of traditional job board where you have everyone under the sun apply. It's good to find the right people in the right place, and like you say, that sort of trusted trader type thing that they have as well is great. You rate them on the projects that they've done, and you can see it's essentially references that companies would usually take right there in front of your eyes before you even speak to them. So you have a good idea about what you're entering into before you even speak to them. So I think it's great, and for us being partnered with them, having the opportunity to put our jobs up there and get people to apply on that site and get more traffic there, it just builds up that sort of culture and network for everyone, because the space is still small, and I think if we all come together, it's better that way. So yeah, it's been really good, and yeah, really like the platform as well. The design that they've got, really easy to use. So yeah.
No, and likewise, I think each of us bring different skill sets to the table, whether it's training, recruitment, or sort of the sort of evaluations of individuals. So I think good to sort of see these partnerships evolving. So I guess I'm gonna sort of move on to our audience questions. We've got some great questions, and I think the first one really has to be around the which tools are the most prevalent, most common in the workplace. We've got a few people ask variations on that question.
Okay, yeah. So what we see the most in demand tools, and the ones that are being used the most. If you'd have asked me, 3-4 years ago, I would have said hands down Blue Prism in the UK. Being a British business, they've got strong heritage in the space. But now what we see, and last year what we saw, is a huge drive of UiPath. We're seeing a lot more organizations starting to use UiPath. sometimes even transition away from other tools and move to that platform. And I think one of the main reasons that has happened is because they've had their community edition out now, their free edition for some time.
2 years,
and
yeah.
Having people, giving people the chance to be able to learn that for free has basically created an influx of people in the market with the skills and knowledge. Obviously, they received huge amounts of funding, which has really helped them push themselves out into the market as well. And we've seen it from our side. A lot of the demand from our side is, for UiPath skills. We see it as a bit of a race to the top between the big three. You've got UiPath, Automation Anywhere, and Blue Prism. If I had to rank them in order, I'd say UiPath are kind of up there at the top at the moment. You've got Automation Anywhere that are just behind, and then you've got Blue Prism in line with them. I think it's a battle for second, and UiPath have kind of got first place at the moment, but it really is up for grabs. And we see things from other smaller challenger vendors. Like I said, we saw a lot from Thoughtonomy, but also the likes of WorkFusion and Cryon, Kofax as well, so and Pega. So there are other tools out there, but yeah, I think certainly the most in demand and the most popular is UiPath.
Yeah, and do you think the recent Thoughtonomy Blue Prism sort of deal will move that order around a little bit? I mean, this is speculative now. We are on predictions sort of side.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, who knows? But yeah, I think that really strengthens Blue Prism's offering. It strengthens what Thoughtonomy's name in the space. I know that they've been a contender for a very long time, and I think it's only going to go strength to strength. So we'll see. Their as a service type platform is great. I've heard some really good things about it. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that has an effect the coming year. So
yeah. And I guess one of the other questions that's come up, and it's something that at the RPA Academy we've sort of been looking at ourselves recently, which is around are there any tools or applications that you're sort of seeing that are commonly now being recruited for alongside the RPA tools themselves?
We've seen quite a lot from a technical perspective. We've seen quite a lot around Python and R.
Okay.
Which naturally leads more into artificial intelligence and data science.
Yeah.
Those core skills around AI and data science, machine learning, those are the ones that if we can find someone with the RPA skills and that sort of knowledge, that person would be in high demand, and we see that quite a lot. And it's always for the organizations that we work with, it's always a really nice to have. If someone has that sort of experience coupled with RPA, then that would really do them quite well, because RPA essentially, as HFS described it, it's a gateway drug to AI. It really is a stepping stone, isn't it, to that next generation of future emerging cutting edge tech. So yeah.
No, that's interesting, because I think that question comes up a lot from our students as well. Are there any sort of core tools? And I think one of the things we're trying to do through our webinar series is invite a few of those other organizations in, to sort of explain where they fit. Because I think it's a growing ecosystem, and UiPath, interestingly, have always developed that open ecosystem. They've always been very open source. Others have sort of more got into it over time. But I think it is that definitely combination where RPA is the core, and some of these very niche sort of AI related tools provide the specific solutions to your specific business problems. Seems to be a growing trend.
No, I agree.
I'm going to pick one last question, because I appreciate we've run over time a little bit, but it is a good question. It's a very good question, so we'll close on this one.
Okay.
And that is, are there any specific industries where you see sort of RPA as being stronger, perhaps more from a recruitment perspective?
Yeah. So one of the industries that stands out for us is financial services and insurance. And I think that's purely down to the fact that these types of organizations have had the cash to be able to, implement the technology. Not only that, but they've got, a lot of processes in their organizations. There's a lot of opportunity there for RPA to have a real benefit. Aside from saving costs, RPA can really help streamline a lot of processes. And these sort of financial service organizations, they're old organizations. They've been around for years and years and years. They've got a lot of processes, like I say, that some could be inefficient or longer than they need to be. And having RPA in the business not only sort of streamlines the way that they work and improves potentially customer satisfaction, internal employee satisfaction as well, but there is that sort of cost save element there as well, saving so many hours on those processes that used to take such a long time. I think because they had the money to invest in that, they've been real advocates of the tech, and they've essentially come in, they've taken the tech in, they've implemented it, and they've proven what RPA can do. And now we're starting to see a lot of other other industries look at RPA and say, well, they've done this, we can do this as well. And if you're a business and you've got a process, it could be essentially it could be automated, and you could save yourselves a lot of time. So we're starting to see a lot more from healthcare, retail, FMCG, manufacturing. A lot of other industries are now really starting to pay attention, given what those sort of early adopters have done. So yeah, that's what we see at the moment, but we are starting to see that expand a lot more now.
Yeah, no, and I would say the same. I mean, I started in financial services myself, and now actually sort of get involved with lots more sort of organisations. So I'm going to stop it there. But actually, there are several other questions. So for everybody who's asked a question, thank you very much. I'm going to work with Harrison to answer a few of these questions, and we'll post them out as in our newsletter. So if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, then please do, and we will see those there. And we're also going to sort of post up a video. So one of the questions was, didn't quite get a chance to see the polls properly. So we're going to post up the video, and we'll post up the results of all the polls alongside those videos as well. So you'll be able to sort of see that material there. That will happen within the next few days. So I guess sort of to bring it all to a close, and a great thank you, Harrison, for all of your insights today. What would your final takeaway for our audience sort of be?
I think it would be for us. I think it's to make sure that if you're a professional in the RPA space, to really stay up to date with current market trends and progressions in the technology, to constantly evolve with the technology, try not to stay standing still, to make sure you give yourself the best possible career opportunity. For organizations, I would say the same. To stay up to date, and that's the reason that we do this market report, to ensure that you're not only rewarding your best employees and the people that are doing this for you, but also attracting the harder to find talent to really bring them into your organization, to make sure you're at the forefront of this technology curve. So yeah, that would be I suppose my final remark.
And I mean, it was purely coincidental. It wasn't planned at all. But of course, one of the ways you can achieve that is through through training and education. And certainly, if you've got any questions on that, please do get in touch. We will send out links to everybody who signed up. We'll send out the links to the materials so that you'll sort of see the video. We'll send out a link to Harrison's market report. So if you haven't downloaded that so far, then please do take a look at that and sort of the great detail that's gone into that, and look out for the next one next year as well.
Yes, we're going to be doing one next year. So we're in the sort of starting phases of getting it all together. So we've got 6 months running up to the end of this year to make sure that we conduct all our research, and then in January we'll release the report for 2019, and hopefully it should include some more bits and pieces, and be filled with useful information. So keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were several questions as well relating to the types of opportunities available. And I think for those types of questions, I think they're best directed direct to Harrison and his team at EdgeTech. So again, we'll send out a link for people to ask those types of questions directly to yourselves, rather than sort of in the format we had today. But really appreciate your time. I think 30 minutes. Well, I think we've overrun by 10 again. But but 30 minutes just wasn't enough time, and we covered a lot of ground. So much appreciated. Thanks for your time today, and thanks to everybody for listening.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.